As the meeting started.
You are going to start the meeting. We have not begun yet.
Okay. Okay, then, if everybody is ready, I will go ahead and call the meeting to order. We have everybody present. Looking for folks.
President Kelly, if I'll just go through real quick and call roll.
Thank you.
Director Gould,
Present.
Orzali,
Here.
Wood,
Aye, here.
Sheets,
Here.
Jones,
Here.
White,
Here.
Clark,
Present.
Sailors. Here. And President Kelly, turning it back over to you.
Thank you. All right. At this time, I would like to begin the meeting for Thursday, March 11th, 2021 for the Sacramento Metropolitan Fire District. Are there any questions from board members? Okay, roll has been called. We've got the Metro Cable announcement. The open session meeting is videotaped for cablecast on Metro Cable 14, replay on Monday, March 15th at 6 p.m. and Wednesday, March 17th at 9 a.m. on Channel 14 webcast at sacmetrocable.tv. Public opportunity to discuss matters of public interest within district jurisdiction, including items on or not on the agenda. Are there any speakers?
We did not have any speakers contact beforehand. However, Art, if you could unmute all of the attendees and give them a chance to speak if they so wish.
No problem. One moment. Hello, attendees. You have the ability to unmute yourself if there is anything you would like to present at the moment. And no response.
Okay, then. Moving on to our consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Oh, pardon me. Would you like to lead our Pledge of Allegiance, Mr. Clark?
Absolutely. Pledge allegiance
To the
flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
Indivisible, with liberty
and
and
justice for all.
All right, then. Moving on to the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion, we adopt consent.
second.
We have a motion from Director Gould and a second from Director Clark. Board Clerk or Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Yes, Director Gould,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Wood, Director Wood, can you?
Aye.
Thank you. Sheets,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Sailors,
Aye.
and Kelly.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. Moving on to presentation items. We have a peer recognition commendation. Chief Harms.
Good evening, President Kelly and board members. Tonight, we have a peer recognition of two of our members, and they are on here tonight, and it's Danny Kim and Dylan Fader, and I see Dylan popping up on here. This is different than we've done before, but with COVID, we just think it's so important to be able to recognize our members. Normally, we would have done it in front of the board, but tonight we're going to do it by Zoom here. It's great pleasure for me as the fire chief to bring this to you this evening as a peer recognition commendation. It was really based upon the crew's ability to look at an emergency situation and quickly adapt from that emergency situation and provide just some unbelievable service to what ended up being a sheriff deputy. On January, and I'm going to kind of go through this. Chief Mitchell is going to talk, and then we'll kind of close it up. On January 18th, 2001, Engine 19 and Medic 105 responded to a violent crime for a shooting that involved 2 Sacramento County Sheriff's officers, and firefighter Fader and firefighter Kim were on Medic 105 at that time. They arrived at the scene, and at that time were notified that they would not be needed at the scene, but also learned that the 2 deputies that had been shot had been transported to Kaiser North. And really at this point in time, the 2 of them took upon themselves, knowing that the ultimate treatment for those deputies would not be there, is that they needed to be able to be transported to a trauma center. They made the call to go to Kaiser North and Medic 105. When Engine 19 cleared, they also came over to there and assisted with treatment, and then assisted with an interfacility transport from Kaiser North to UC Davis. And I believe that is what made the difference on the outcome of that patient. And why it's significant is we have service delivery guidelines, we have standard operating procedures that are in place, we have protocols for us to follow, but for being able to make a decision in real time of what is the best thing for the patients that were transported, where do we need to be able to go to that hospital, interact. I know there's a lot of details as far as the treatment portions of it, and then being able to load up and transport that member from the sheriff's office to the other hospital. They just went above and beyond. It would have been easy for them. I feel that if they would have been told, hey, go back in quarters or go back in services, just to do that. But that ability to adapt to the situation, use their experience, and then respond, truly had a great outcome on the other side. Chief Mitchell, would you like to comment?
Yeah, Chief, thanks. You hit a lot of the points that I wanted to talk about. You know, our members do a fantastic job day in and day out providing service out there. Like Chief said, we write down our protocols, procedures, SOGs, and those guidelines are best practices on how we operate in a pretty dynamic and sometimes chaotic environment. And with that, you know, we talk a lot about over the last couple of years about critical thinking, decision-making, and problem solving. And recently the publication of our command manual reinforces those tenets, if you will, or those values. And so I'm incredibly proud of the decisions that the 2 firefighters made on that chaotic night. They utilized their skill sets. They recognized what was right, and could have, like you said, taken a different course of action, but they decided, and rightly, to stay engaged and to do what they did to provide the best service delivery to one of our law enforcement partners with an incredibly positive outcome. So I'm really proud of the outcome. I'm also proud of the members that pushed this forward and brought this to our attention to make sure that we recognize the 2 firefighters tonight. But thank you both for doing what you've done and what you continue to do out there day over day, day after day, in the operations of our district. Back to you, Chief.
Thank you. So Dylan, this is the odd part. This is maybe right here is yours, and we'll send that out to you. And Danny, I can see you now on there. Here is your recognition. Again, thank you very much. Would Dylan or Danny, would you like to say something?
I'd just like to say thank you guys for putting this all together. It's I know it's kind of weird with everything going on this year, but it's much appreciated. But yeah, the recognition is appreciated. But like we said, told our crews and everything, we do it again any day of the week. So.
And I'll reinforce that is good. Thank you. Danny, how about you?
I'm on the same boat with Fader there, Chief. Feel like we just both looked at each other, felt like we knew what was right, and just made the right call. So I think we appreciate that we are getting acknowledged for it, and hopefully other people would, be inspired to do the same thing if the same thing comes back up again.
Outstanding. Both of you, thank you very much. We will have these out to you here next week. President, that ends our presentation unless there's any other comments or questions from board members.
How do you do a standing ovation on this thing? Normally in person, that's what we would do right now. So thank you so
Yes.
much.
Thank you, guys.
Director Gould, was either of these gentlemen in your program?
Absolutely. Yep. Dylan was an exceptional student and continues to be an exceptional employee. So we're really proud of him and his partner for making those decisions.
Great. Thank you, Director Gould. Anything else from any other directors? Seeing none, we will move the agenda. Gentlemen, I would echo Director Gould's words. You guys stood up and did the right thing. And certainly you are the future of this organization. Thank you for your dedication. We have an operating budget meritorious award for the fiscal year 2020-21. Amanda Thomas.
Good evening, President Kelly, directors. Amanda Thomas, Chief Financial Officer. It's my pleasure this evening to let you know that the district has received for the third consecutive year the California Society of Municipal Finance Officers Operating Budget Meritorious Award for our fiscal year 2021 adopted final budget. This awards program is designed to recognize those agencies whose budget documents meet certain statewide standards and requirements considered to be of the highest quality. In presenting this award, I would like to especially acknowledge the efforts of Tara Mailer, who is the financial analyst in the finance division, who's responsible for preparing the budget schedules and the budget documents that you all review. And she did so this year under some particularly challenging circumstances. So I really want to acknowledge her efforts. Additionally, I'd also like to thank the leadership and staff of all of the divisions for their contributions to the budget document, and note that the award reviewers were very complimentary of all of the divisional narratives that are included in the document, and those are provided by each of the divisions. So I do want to acknowledge all of their efforts there as well. So again, thank you to everyone involved, and that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
I was very pleased to read this article, or excuse me, this agenda item. Are there any comments by other board members? Seeing none, thank you again for the hard work of the accounting division. It's an absolute pleasure to read things like this when they come through. Thank you again, and great work to everybody involved. So, action items. It's still you, Ms. Thomas. So we have action item, we have our fiscal year 2021 mid-year budget. Ms. Thomas?
Thank you, President Kelly. And while I'm getting the PowerPoint ready to share, I believe that Chief Harms would like to say a few words, so I will turn it over to him.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Directors, tonight we'll bring a balanced budget to you for fiscal year 2021, in which Amanda will go through. The only update I wanted to give was, if you saw tonight, the Americans Rescue Plan has moved forward. Unfortunately, as a special district, we will not be receiving any of that funding. Jeff Fry, along with the CSDA, continues to push for special districts and trying to be able to put the needs of the special districts forward. And we will continue on that. We do know that the state will receive about $381 billion and an additional $10 billion on special projects. We have been trying to work with the local 522 and along at the state level to influence any of the really, if you look at our lost revenue or anything of the impact of COVID on the district, for being able to do that moving forward. But for right now, the special districts across the state, or really across the US, are not included. Amanda, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chief. So as the Chief indicated, this evening we are presenting recommended mid-year budget adjustments. And just in terms of an overview of what I'll be talking about and what those recommendations are, as I think you all are aware, our mid-year budget adjustments are based on our second quarter budget review. So we're looking at our actual revenues and expenditures for the first 6 months of the fiscal year, so through December 31st, 2020. And then we're developing estimates and projections for the remainder of the year to come up with those recommended budget adjustments. The mid-year adjustments were presented to the Finance and Audit Committee on February 25th, and with one very minor modification. What's being presented to you tonight is the same as what was presented to that committee. Overall, the recommended adjustments result in a budgeted general fund surplus, which is reduced from $2 million in the current final budget to $1 million after these recommendations. And we'll talk about some of the reasons why that is, but I do think it's important to note that that $1 million remaining surplus really results from funds that were received this fiscal year for the Mobile Integrated Health Program. And because that program has really been put on hold as a result of our response to COVID, those funds that were received this year are really going to be dedicated to future year expenditures for that program. The changes for other funds, so non-general funds, include transfers of some excess amounts from our pension obligation bond fund and our grants fund to the capital facilities fund to help enhance our capital replacement reserve. So looking overall at the recommended mid-year budget for the general fund and the recommended changes compared to our final budget, for total revenues, you can see that we're looking at a reduction of about $1.3 million in budgeted revenues. And I'll go into some detail about what is resulting in that change. Looking at our expenditures, you can see labor costs. We're recommending an adjustment of an increase of about $1.5 million in our labor costs. And then that increase is partially offset by some decreases in other costs. So the overall total expenditures are increasing by about $700,000. And then finally, looking towards the bottom of this table at the transfers in and transfers out, we have an increase in the transfers in coming in from the IGT fund and a decrease in transfers out going to the capital facilities fund, which is resulting, the combination of those two is resulting in an additional $600,000 for the general fund. So overall, if you look at the revenues less expenses plus transfers, we're going from, as I mentioned earlier, a budgeted surplus of about $2 million in the current final budget to just under $900,000 with these recommendations. So overall, a reduction of about $1.3 million. So looking a little bit closer at the revenues and what's going on there, as I mentioned, we're recommending a total general fund budgeted revenue decrease of 1.3 million to $229 million. And the largest factors contributing to that change are our deployment revenue. We're estimating a $2 million reduction compared to what was budgeted at final budget. As you know, there's an offset there. So when we have, lower than expected deployment activity, that results in lower revenue, but it also results in lower labor expenses. So we have a $1.7 million reduction in the labor budget related to that. And then in addition to the change in deployment revenue, we are also looking at a reduction in our medic cost recovery revenue of about $1.9 million. And that's really due to lower than anticipated medical transport activity this fiscal year. That's something that we sort of seen consistently during the first 6 months of the fiscal year. And we're projecting that that's going to result in a $2 million reduction compared to what we have budgeted, or $1.9 million reduction compared to what we have budgeted. We do have some increases that are helping to at least partially offset those reductions. So for contract services revenue, we're projecting a $900,000 increase versus budget. That's primarily related to the contract that we have in place with the county to provide mobile COVID testing units. So that revenue wasn't anticipated or included at final budget. So we're adding that in at mid-year. And then additionally, we have a little bit of good news on the property tax front. So based on our actual year-to-date collections for some of the property tax revenues that are not based on the current year assessment roll, but either related to prior year amounts or supplemental taxes, we are projecting an $800,000 increase in property tax revenues for the year. Turning to look at expenses, as I mentioned, overall, we are recommending an increase of about $1.5 million in the labor budget to $196 million. This increase results primarily from higher than budgeted expenditures for our callback overtime. So we're looking at a $4.6 million increase there after adjusting for the impacts of vacancies and deployments. And we know that this is partially resulting from higher than expected workers' comp leave, really related to COVID exposures and illnesses. We expect that while we have seen that impact in the first half of the year, we do expect that impact will decline in the second half of the fiscal year. So we're really assuming that those impacts get better. So we're kind of factoring in what we've seen for the first half of the year, but expecting an improvement for the second half of the year. As I mentioned, when we were talking about revenues, we do have a $1.7 million reduction resulting from lower than expected deployment activity. And then finally, we have some additional savings from position vacancies that translate into a $1.6 million reduction. Looking at some of the other general fund adjustments, we are recommending a decrease in our services and supplies budget of $1.2 million for a total of $30 million. That's really resulting from a couple of things. The first being, there are certain programs and activities that we anticipated completing this year when the final budget was prepared that really, due to COVID restrictions, we're just not able to do them. So we have those impacts, as well as we really did go through an effort once we understood that our revenue picture was looking a little bit worse than what we had included at final budget, and our labor costs were higher than anticipated. We really went through an effort that involved all of the divisions, and I want to thank everyone for their contributions. That was to identify additional opportunities for savings to help offset some of the impacts of those reduced revenues and increased labor expenses. Looking at the final category of expenditures in the general fund, which are taxes, licenses, debt service, and others, we have an increase there of about $400,000, and that's really resulting from an increase in the GEMT, or ground emergency medical transport quality assurance fee rate. So this is essentially a tax that we pay to the state, and there was an increase in that rate that we were not aware of at the time the final budget was developed. So that's what's resulting in those additional budgeted expenditures. And then finally, as I mentioned earlier, we have an increase in the transfers into the general fund of about $200,000. That's due largely to interest earnings in the IGT fund. and then a decrease in the transfers out of about 400,000, which is due to the timing of debt service in the capital facilities fund. So the combination of those two is resulting in an additional 600,000 in general fund resources. So in summary, combined, the recommended mid-year adjustments result in a reduced general fund budget surplus from 2.2 million to, as I said, about 900,000. Again, that remaining surplus is really resulting from funding received this fiscal year for the mobile integrated health program that was put on hold this year. So that funding is being reserved for future year expenditures for that program. So with these changes, the projected reserve balance at the end of the fiscal year on June 30th is $34 million. And that remains at approximately 15% of our net budgeted expenditures. So with that, the recommendation this evening is to approve the resolutions adopting the mid-year budget amendments for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there questions by the board members? Seeing no questions, comments, I would accept motions in order for resolutions A through, it looks like G today.
Mr. Chair, I'll move resolution 2020-2021 mid-year budget for the general operating fund 212A.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Director Woods and a second from Director Jones. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Director Gould,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Sheets,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Clark. Clark notified me that he was having some technical issues. So we will move to Sailors
Aye.
and Kelly.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. What's your pleasure with resolution B?
I'll
Mr.
make
Chair,
a
I'll move, oh, go ahead.
I'll move that we accept the resolution for mid-year budget for the Capital Facilities Fund 212D as in David. Second on the Capital Facilities Fund transfer.
We have a motion by Director Sailors and a second by Director Jones. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Director Gould,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Sheets,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Clark, Sailors,
Aye.
and Kelly.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. Moving on to resolution C. What's your pleasure?
Mr. Chair, I'll move resolution, or item C, resolution 2021 mid-year budget for the pension obligation bond fund 212E.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Director Wood and a second by Director Sailors. Madam Clerk, will you call, excuse me, any questions on the motion? Seeing no questions, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Director Gould,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Sheets,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Clark, Sailors,
Aye.
and Kelly.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Item D, do we have a motion for item D?
Mr. Chair, I'll move item D, resolution 2020-2021 mid-year budget for the grants fund 212G.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Director Woods and a second by Director Sailors. Any questions on the motion? Seeing no questions, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Director Gould,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Sheets,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Clark, Sailors,
Aye.
and Kelly.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Moving on to item E.
Mr. Chair, I'll move item E, resolution 2020-2021 mid-year budget for the Development Impact Fees Fund 212I.
I'll be glad to second.
We've got a motion by Director Wood and a second by Director Jones. Any questions from directors? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Director Gould,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Sheets,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Clark, Sailors,
Aye.
and Kelly.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay. All right, then we have a motion, or we have a resolution F. What's your pleasure?
Mr. Chair, I'll move for resolution 2020-21 mid-year budget for the Leased Properties Fund 212L.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Sailors and a second by Director Wood. Any questions on the motion? Seeing no questions, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Director Gould,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Sheets,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Clark, Sailors,
Aye.
and Kelly.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, then we have
Thank you.
item G. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chair, I'll move resolution 20/21 mid-year budget for the Intergovernmental Transfer IGT Fund 212M.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Sailors, a second by Director Wood. Any questions on the motion? Seeing no questions, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Director Gould,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Sheets,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Sailors,
Aye.
and Kelly.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, that takes care of the mid-year budget resolution.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I apologize for not, for missing the other votes. Some quirky happened with my iPad, so I finally got it resolved.
I understand. All right, thank you. And I'd like to thank you for Director Wood. You carried a great deal of those. If you're tired, we understand. All right, then. Moving on to our California Special Districts Authorities nominations for the Sierra Network, Seat A. Madam Clerk, you are going to handle this.
Yes, good evening, President Kelly and directors. Before you this evening, you have the opportunity to nominate a member of the board or a managerial employee to serve or potentially serve in the Sierra Network Seat A of the California Special Districts Association. Now, this is something you're probably familiar with because this is a rotational seat that comes up every year. And so this is your chance in 2021 to make a nomination for the 2022-24 term. And I would be happy to answer any questions. If you have a nomination this evening, now would be the time. We have until March 29th to respond.
All right. Is there anybody that has a great interest in serving on the California Special Districts Authority? If there is, let's have some conversation offline possibly. And we will bring it back and put a nomination forward either for ourselves, or do we have nominations from other districts or individuals that are running that we can support?
Tonight
This
would
is
be
just
the opportunity for us to
nominations
nominate
only.
a member from Metro Fire.
Okay.
When we receive the other nominations from other districts, you will have the chance to vote for
All
whomever
right.
put their name in.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, you have your hand up, Director Jones. You have your hand up. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Just a quick procedural question. It's not me. If someone decides to run for this seat, do we have, in the timeline, do we have, is our next meeting afford us adequate time to put in a name?
Our next meeting is on March 25th, and we would have to submit our nomination by March 29th. So that would give us enough time. We would just need the nominee to fill out the paperwork rather quickly, probably within the next business day, which I can assist with. That's not a problem.
Thank you for that clarification.
Madam Clerk, do
All right.
we have any idea of what the roles and responsibilities are of said elected person?
I would
I'm not
say
looking
that
at my agenda.
the expectations are rather large.
Yeah.
You have to attend the 4 to 5 meetings annually. Those are in Sacramento, which is convenient for where we're located. They ask you to participate on at least one committee. That committee meets 3 to 5 times per year. They want you to attend at a minimum one of the CSDA annual events. Those are special district legislative days held in the spring or the annual conference held in the fall. And they also want you to complete the 4 modules of CSDA's Special District Leadership Academy within the 2 years of being elected. So there is quite the list of commitments that you would need to fulfill in this position if you were selected.
Thank you.
All right. Takes no action at the moment. We will table that and wait and see. All right, moving on to reports. President's report, I have nothing to report on. Moving on to Fire Chief's report.
Good evening again, directors. I just have a few things for tonight. For recruitment, we have an open recruitment for reserve firefighter. For career development, we have a pilot program for a fire investigator 1 that is for internal only, in which we will be looking at some changes in our arson investigations and some changes in some supervisory positions there, and looking at a way that we can do it better. For meetings on March 2nd, we had our 2x2 with Citrus Heights. I'll let Director Gould and Director Orzali talk more about the meeting. Myself, I felt it was a very positive meeting. Again, they are just a great partnership with us. We reviewed the 2019 and 2020 response stats. We talked a lot about the COVID-19 and the units that are on the street. We looked at some Citrus Heights statistics year to date, and we talked about Fill the Boot and the activity there and the support from Citrus Heights, which has been great. On the 3rd, myself and Chief Cassantini had an opportunity to meet with County Executive Ann Edwards. It had taken a little bit of time for us to put together the meeting, but we had just a really positive meeting with her. Talked a lot about some of the districts, some of the activity that we have been involved with really in this past year, and then also had an opportunity to talk about some long-term partnerships with the county and some long-term goals of the district being able to move forward. We would like to look at being able to have kind of a standing meeting with her, as it was a very positive, very productive meeting. We hosted the California Fire Chiefs, the Metro groups, our monthly meeting. I attended the Homeland Security Advisory Committee meeting for behalf of Cal Chiefs and through OES. And let's see, the last thing that I just want to share is on the 19th, we are going to have a very small groundbreaking ceremony at the new Station 68. Due to the COVID restrictions that are going on, we are really planning for more of an open house and a grand opening and doing just a very small invite for the groundbreaking right now for that side of it. That ends my report. I'm going to turn it over now to Deputy Chief Adam Mitchell.
Thanks, Chief, and good evening again, President Kelly, directors. I'm gonna a couple of items here for you tonight. First off, on the training front, we just concluded almost a 3-year partnership with the Heights Church up at 6540 Sylvan Road. We had been allowed to use the site for multiple different company drills, probationary evaluations, firefighter academy training, and a number of live burns. We had 7 total structures that we were able to utilize through our partnership with them. Special thanks goes out to the church lead pastors, Craig and Becky Sweeney, and our point of contact there, the facilities director, Roger France. Very, very valuable training, a long-term relationship. Our last live burn opportunity concluded on Wednesday, March 3rd. We do have some other acquired structures that we're working with now. I look forward to more of that training, but that was, in my recollection, the longest acquired structure training opportunity that we had. So a lot of good came out of that for our members. On the COVID front, currently we just have 2 folks off work awaiting their test results. No one is off right now with a positive, and I'm happy to report that we have maintained our 112 positive folks for no additional positive folks in the last month. So we're staying at 112 since the beginning of the pandemic, which is a good report. Also, our Metro Fire vaccination pod concluded their operations with our emergency operations team last Thursday on March 4th. And again, as we were moving towards last board meeting that I mentioned, we successfully administered vaccines and we had 0 waste. So that's a big accomplishment for those members that put that together, and thank you for that. Big success there. And then our member testing, internal member testing continues, and just like everything else, which is a good news, is there are numbers of days where we don't have anybody that we need to test due to exposures or any symptoms. So that trend continues, and looking forward to moving on when we can under the direction of Sac County Health with some of the COVID restrictions. A little bit busier on the call front, uptick a little bit from our last 2-week period. We've had 3,648 total calls. We had 13 building fires total, 3 of those within our own district. And then the busiest engine company went back to engine 53 this time with 187 responses, and busiest medics still maintained at medic 224 at 109 responses in the last 2-week period. And then I'll finish up with another positive note from our membership doing a great job out there. We received notification on March 9th this week from UC Davis about a commendation for crew engine 54 and medic 61 A shift. They responded to an incident for a 41-year-old female that presented with some left-sided weakness, slurred speech, and a facial droop. And the crews recognized that quickly as a positive on the Cincinnati pre-hospital stroke scale. And they were able to, prior to their arrival at the emergency department at UC Davis, did a pre-notification for their stroke team. Because of that, upon arrival at the emergency department, the team was already in place and ready to go. They received the patient. They performed a number of procedures, administered some medication, and happy to report that very quickly after administration of the medication and the procedure, all of those symptoms for that patient resolved completely. The strength was a 5 out of a 5 and all 4 extremities. Speech was clear and the facial droop resolved. So due to the quick actions and thinking of the crews and being proactive in that notification, that was a very good positive outcome for that member in our community. So that's it for operations report, unless there's any questions.
Are there any questions of Chief Mitchell?
I just have a comment. That's just amazing to hear.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yes, it is. Anything from other directors? Seeing none. Chief, do you have anything?
Nope,
else?
thank you.
Nope. All right then. Moving on to our executive committee or committee and delegate, or excuse me. Is Mr. McGoldrick available with
here.
the firefighters? Yes, please go ahead.
President Kelly and Board of Directors. First, I just wanted to comment on the commendation that was presented tonight to the two firefighters, firefighter Kim and firefighter Fader. I have talked to them. You know, they say what most people say. Anybody would have done the same thing. They did an outstanding job, nothing short of outstanding. Secondly, on the 1-year anniversary of the pandemic announcement, there are some thanks that are due. Thanks to staff for all their hard work getting us frontline vaccinations, antibody tests, PPE. Great job all around. Thanks to the men and women of Metro Fire for getting the rubber on the road and continuing a high level of service for the community. That's all I have tonight, unless you have any questions.
Any questions of Mr. McGoldrick? Seeing none, Captain, thank you. Moving on to reports of committees and delegates. Executive committee, there is not a report to present. Communications Center, JPA, Deputy Chief Wagaman.
Good evening, President Kelly and directors, Chief Harms, Tyler Wagaman, Deputy Chief of Support Services. The JPA Dispatch Board met on March 9th. During that meeting, we had a really good presentation covering our after action review from the most recent UPS battery replacement, which was a big project, one that has taken some years to complete. So it was a very comprehensive process that they went through. They did a great job at identifying things that they were very successful at. And as professionals, we also talked about some things that we can improve upon. So we documented those, and we're going to implement some new practices and make sure that if this same scenario happens again in the future, whether it is controlled or not, that we take these lessons that we learn and we move forward with them. Also, two big milestones to talk about, one of which ties right into our service delivery model. Again, for Metro Fire's #1 priority of service delivery, we must have to have a dispatch center that follows suit to support that priority. In order to do that, we've been working really hard at hiring additional dispatchers, as well as implementing new software. I'm happy to report that since Metro Fire has put leadership over there, we're starting our 3rd academy. They started last Monday here at the Metro Fire Disaster Recovery Site. We have 7 recruits. And when you look at a total of 35 dispatchers total, 7 is a pretty large number. So this is another very large academy. We're hopeful with the candidates that we have that we are successful with all 7. We'll keep our fingers crossed as they cruise through their 10-week academy process. Also, been talking about the last several years, the implementation of new software, and they were successful last week at implementing ProQA, which is a new software program that is tied into our CAD system. So the minute they take a medical aid call, it launches this new software. Instead of running through a manual EMD card process, it's actually fully automated. It comes up on their CAD screen, and it provides them all the questions that they have to ask the caller. So it adds a lot of consistency to the process. It also speeds up the call processing time. As they're walking through these questions, soon as the software knows there's the minimum amount of information that we need in order to dispatch a call, it triggers the call to be dispatched as the questioning continues. So like I said, this is another great milestone for our dispatch center and all the fire agencies. A big learning curve for our dispatch staff, so I commend them as they've gone through the training process and have been very successful over the last several days using this new software. So I commend, again, the dispatch staff and Assistant Chief Ty Bailey at making yet another great milestone. So that concludes my report, unless you have any questions for me. Our board is going to meet again on April 13th. Thank you.
Any questions for Deputy Chief Wagaman?
Yes, this is Director Sailors. I have a question.
Please go ahead.
With this Pro QA, how much time does it dispatch the ambulance faster, since it will automatically get the call out? Is there a noticeable shortening of the dispatch time?
So we are looking at those times on a daily basis. Obviously, when we integrate new software, it takes a little bit of time to get used to it, to get the new workflows in place. But the good news is our CAD system documents every single bit of that information, from the time that the call is transferred to the time the dispatcher picks up the call. It documents the answer to each call at every second the clock is counting. So we're going to have the ability to go back and look at that data to see if we're making a difference. And we are hopeful that it will make a positive difference. We don't have that data just yet. We do want again, the dispatchers to work with it for a little while, and we want it to run a little bit, and then we'll start pulling data.
Okay, thank you very much.
You bet.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Deputy Chief Wagaman? Seeing none, we will move on to committee and delegate reports. Item C, the California Fire and Rescue Training JPA. Chief Harms?
We have not met since our last meeting. Our next meeting is April 15th. End of report.
All right. Thank you, sir. Item D, Finance and Audit Committee, Director Orzali.
Finance and Audit Committee will meet on March 25th at a time to be determined.
All right. And then the Policy Committee, item E, Director Gould.
Mr. Chair, the Policy Committee met this evening and reviewed two policies and approved them to move to the full board. The first was the family leave, and the second was the purchasing policy. Those both have been approved by the Policy Committee to be moved to the full board for conversation in our next meeting.
All right, then. Thank you for that. I looked earlier for Mr. Connor. I did not see him on online with us. Is he ready for our meeting, our closed session?
He is in closed session, ready for us
Okay.
to join.
Okay, at this time, we can all move to closed session, and then we'll come back for board members' questions and comments. All right, or would you guys rather do that first? I don't know. Anybody? All right, we'll go to closed session. All right, now we have board member questions and comments. I don't know how many questions there are, but if we would like to start with comments, would you consider starting, Director White?
You need a report out first.
Yeah, Director.
Oh, report out from Council Labra first.
Yes, thank you, Director Kelly. The board met in closed session with respect to item number 1 on the closed session agenda, the workers' compensation claim concerning employee Flor Oliveras. The board voted to give approval to its third-party administrator to effectuate and approve a settlement of that workers' compensation claim. The board also met in closed session concerning item number 2 on the closed session agenda, the workers' compensation claim of employee Janice Odestig. The board also voted to approve giving settlement authority to its third-party administrator to effectuate and approve a settlement of that workers' compensation claim. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Labra. All right, moving on to Director White. Would you like to begin with any comments or questions that you have?
Sure. First, I'd just like to commend the swift and decisive actions of both firefighters Fader and Kim, as well as our crew that responded to the stroke patient to ensure the positive patient outcome. Also very glad to hear that Pro QA has been implemented at our dispatch center, and hopeful that that will result in saving time on the dispatch process. With that, that ends my report. No comments.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to Director Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to reiterate and reconfirm all the comments that Director White made. Thank you. I concur. Well said. Also, I'd like to acknowledge the work of our finance department, finance division led by Amanda Thomas. It's always grueling work. It's hard, it's ongoing, it never stops. So thank you very much for always being ready on the spot, Johnny on the spot for questions about finances, numbers. We do appreciate all your ongoing efforts. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Excellent. Director Sheets.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any comments tonight. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You as well. How about Director Gould?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to thank the chief and staff for the wonderful 2x2 meeting that we had with the Citrus Heights leadership. It's clear to me that through that leadership, we're able to have a good working relationship with one of our 2 contract cities. And I really appreciate that. Clearly, they think highly of this organization, which is a good thing. Thank you to my colleagues for their perseverance through COVID-19. And hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we'll be able to see each other in the flesh. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gould. Director Orzali.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to just express my appreciation to the city of Citrus Heights for their participation in our 2x2 meeting. I was very impressed, as always, with the amount of data that is available and was presented to us from the Metro Fire side. Very impressive and greatly appreciated. Also want to congratulate our firefighters for the initiative that they showed in helping those wounded officers. And of course, Amanda Thomas, whom I've thanked 1,000 times and will likely continue to, for all of those efforts. So with that, that completes my report. Thank you.
Moving on to Director Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just echo the comments from the prior directors and just wish that everyone have a very safe and happy weekend and St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you. Director Clark, excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, I have no comments to add at this point.
All right. Director Sailors.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no comments either tonight. Thank you.
All right. Then I guess it's me. I tell you what, the award for the finance division, the gentleman that stepped up, did the right thing. It's no surprise to me. This is the high performing team known as Metro Fire, and it's an absolute pleasure to be associated with it. I hope that you all have a good night. And thank you again. You guys have a safe holiday, and I apologize for being late to the meeting. Enjoy.
You're forgiven, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night, Mr. Chair. Good night.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.